The gallery hummed with the peculiar silence that only vast spaces could produce. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood before the covered monument, his dress uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. Around him, representatives from 47 species maintained respectful distances, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. The Velthian curator, her crystalline skin refracting the ambient light into countless rainbow fragments, approached with measured steps. Her species had maintained the archive of lost civilizations for 12,000 years, and her bearing showed every century of that proud tradition. "Ambassador Webb," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality her people were known for. "We are honored that humanity accepted our invitation." Marcus nodded, trying to ignore the weight of expectation pressing down on his shoulders. 3 months ago, the Velthian Archaeological Institute had made an unprecedented discovery on a dead world in the Outer Rim. They had found something impossible, something that contradicted every established theory about galactic history. They had found evidence of humanity. The problem was simple and terrifying. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. The ruins on that dead world were dated to 60,000 years before present. "The honor is ours," Marcus replied, his throat dry, "though I confess to considerable confusion about what your expedition discovered." The curator's expression shifted into what Marcus had learned was the Velthian equivalent of a sympathetic smile. "Confusion is the beginning of understanding, Ambassador. Please, the revelation awaits." She gestured toward the cloth-covered object at the gallery's center. It stood perhaps 3 meters tall, draped in a shimmering fabric that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Around the perimeter, scientists and diplomats from across known space had gathered. Marcus recognized several. The Corthan military observer with his chitinous armor plates, the floating spherical form of a Lumin scholar, the four-armed Dravix historian whose writings Marcus had studied during the journey. "Before we proceed," the curator continued, "I must provide context. 60,000 years ago, the galactic community existed in a form we barely recognize. The ancients, as we call them, had spread across 10,000 worlds. Their technology exceeded even our current capabilities in many respects." Marcus listened, familiar with the general history. The ancients had vanished in what the archaeological record suggested was a sudden, catastrophic collapse. Within a span of less than a century, their civilization had crumbled. No one knew why. What we discovered on Kepler 442b changes our understanding of that era, the curator said. The ruins there contained archives, information stores that survived the millennia through technology we still cannot fully comprehend. She paused, and Marcus saw something like worry cross her alien features. "The archives contain genetic records," she continued, "biological templates, experiments." Her voice dropped lower. One species stood out among all others in the frequency of documentation and the intensity of study. Marcus felt his heart accelerate. Around him, the gathered representatives leaned closer. "Ambassador Webb," the curator said formally, "on behalf of the Velthian Archaeological Institute, and with the authorization of the Galactic Council, I ask your permission to reveal what we have found." This was the moment. The reason Earth's government had sent him halfway across the galaxy with instructions to maintain composure regardless of what he learned. "You have my permission," Marcus said, proud that his voice remained steady. The curator raised one crystalline hand. "Please, Ambassador, the honor of revelation should be yours. Take the cloth off." Marcus stepped forward. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the fabric. It felt cool under his fingers, smooth like silk, but somehow alive. He grasped it firmly and pulled. The cloth fell away. Marcus stood in astonishment. Before him, rendered in perfect holographic detail, floated an image of a human being. Not just any human, but a representation so detailed that individual pores were visible on the skin. The figure was male, approximately 30 years old, athletic build, with features that could have belonged to any of Earth's diverse populations. He wore clothing that seemed to merge ancient Earth styles with technology that didn't exist in any museum Marcus had ever visited. But it was the data surrounding the hologram that made Marcus's breath catch. Streams of information cascaded in languages he recognized. Ancient Sumerian, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Sanskrit, Proto-Indo-European, languages that had existed on Earth thousands of years before recorded history, all documenting the same impossible fact. Subject species designation, humanity, the Dravex historian read aloud, her voice filled with scholarly excitement. Classification, persistence predator, endurance hunter, toolmaker, pattern seeker. The hologram rotated slowly. More data appeared. Genetic sequences, evolutionary timelines, biological specifications that matched human physiology with disturbing accuracy. The ancients were fascinated by your species, the curator explained. The archives contain more information about humanity than any other subject. They documented everything. Your evolutionary path, your psychological makeup, your capacity for cooperation and competition. Marcus found his voice. This is impossible. Humans evolved on Earth. We have the fossil record, the genetic evidence, everything that proves our origin. Yes, the curator agreed. You did evolve on Earth. The archives are clear on that point. Then how? Marcus demanded, frustration bleeding into his tone. How could they have known about us 60,000 years ago? The Corthan observer spoke for the first time, his voice a deep rumble. The obvious answer, human, is that they visited your world. More than visited, the Dravex historian added. They studied your ancestors extensively. The archives suggest they maintained research stations on your world for thousands of years. Marcus felt the gallery spinning slightly. Why? What made us so interesting to them? The curator touched a control surface. The hologram shifted, and new images appeared. Humans running across ancient savannas. Humans crafting tools. Humans forming groups, hunting in coordinated packs, tracking prey across impossible distances. Your species possessed qualities the ancients found remarkable, she explained. Physical endurance that exceeded most predators. Problem-solving abilities that emerged from necessity. Social structures that balanced individual capability with collective action. They admired you, the Lumin scholar added, its translated voice carrying harmonics of surprise. The documentation makes that clear. They saw in humanity a reflection of qualities they valued. Marcus stared at the images. He saw his ancestors, saw them as the ancients had seen them, 60,000 years in the past. Primitive by galactic standards, but possessing something that had captured the attention of a civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. There's more, the curator said quietly. She manipulated the controls again, and the hologram changed to display a map. Marcus recognized it immediately. Earth, but not modern Earth. This was Earth as it had existed during the last ice age. Continents familiar, but coastlines different. Scattered across the surface were markers. Hundreds of them. Research stations? Marcus asked. Observation points, the curator corrected. They watched, but rarely interfered. The documentation suggests they had strict protocols about contamination of developing species. The Corthan observer made a sound that his translator rendered as a grunt. They followed rules we maintain today. The prime directive of non-interference. Marcus studied the map, his mind racing. What happened to them? The ancients? That remains our greatest mystery, the Dravex historian said. The archives end abruptly. Whatever catastrophe destroyed their civilization happened too quickly for proper documentation. The curator gestured, and the display changed once more. This time it showed text, rendered in a dozen languages, including modern English. "We found this message," she said. It was encoded separately from the main archives, protected by encryption that took our best systems 3 years to break. Marcus read the words aloud. "To those who come after, we watched them hunt across grasslands under alien stars. We watched them craft tools from bone and stone. We watched them care for their injured and bury their dead with ceremony. We watched them dream of worlds beyond their sky. In them, we saw our own beginning. In them, we saw our hope. If you are reading this, we have failed. Perhaps they will succeed where we could not. Perhaps the persistence that drives them across endless plains will drive them to the stars. We leave this record so they will know they were never alone. They were always magnificent." Silence filled the gallery. Marcus felt moisture in his eyes and didn't care who saw. The curator spoke softly. For 60,000 years, that message waited. Waited for the day humanity would reach for the stars and find it. Marcus turned to face the assembled representatives. He saw respect in their varied forms. Some species had been traveling between stars for millennia, others for mere centuries. But all of them understood what this meant. Humanity hadn't just joined the galactic community. They had been part of its story since before recorded history began. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. The curator's crystalline form seemed to glow brighter. "Now, Ambassador, we learn together. The archives contain